we're going to take off this particular plate here. There. We're also going to take off inside of here. There's this little panel that has another set of screws in there. And we're going to take off this lock here. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start off with this one. We're going to just put the screwdriver in here. There's a small little spot in here. I'm going to just try to pop this out. Just get this and just move it out of the way. We're going to do the same thing over here with your screwdriver. You're just going to pry it in there, pull that out. Now with your socket, you'll see here you've got one screw here and you've got two screws in there. So that's what we're going to be getting at. What we're going to do here is we're going to take off this this lock button here. You're going to basically pick it up with this other screwdriver, which I didn't mention earlier. We need to pry this particular part out and then lift this out. So you're just going to stick your screwdriver in here, just pry it out a little bit. It's just going to pull out just a little bit and comes out. If this pops out, which it did for me just a little while ago, don't worry about it. Just grab it and just put it back. What it is it's just a small little piece that just goes in here. As long as you don't break it, you're okay, but you can just put it back in without any issues. So you just move that aside and move on to the next step. Alright, so the next step, you can do this part if you want to, or you can just take off the whole thing, but I personally prefer to just go ahead and take this particular part off. You just kind of get a screwdriver and just pry it under here. Just pick it up from all sides because it will kind of get stuck. So you just pull it off like this, and what you want to do is you want to disconnect all of these. You don't have to worry about where they go because each one, you'll notice, has a marking on here that says black, gray, brown, and white, and black here. So you know where they go back afterwards. So we're just going to take this off and we're going to move this aside as well. And this next part, what you want to do is just grab a screwdriver, just get underneath the panel. You can pull it up a little bit, or you can just try to get a different spot where you can get it out. And just put the screwdriver in and just start popping it out. You'll see that the whole thing starts popping out. You don't just want to pull, but you want to pull up a little bit. This particular part comes out as well. You don't just pull it, because in this particular one, you'll see that there's this cable that goes for the door handle that's still connected right there. So what you want to do is you want to pull that piece off before you pull the entire panel off. So for this next piece here, what you're going to do is you're going to get some needle nose and you're going to come in here and you'll see a little clip right there on that piece. You need to take that clip off and then make that ball right there and that line come out of there before you can pull this whole panel off. So that's what we're going to do right here. Just be very careful so that you don't break this piece. Okay, so all you do is you come in and you want to squeeze this piece right here. You want to squeeze this and take it out of that hole right there. Once you do that part, it's just as simple as just coming in here and pulling this piece out of here. So that's how you take off that door panel. And you can just move it aside for right now, because that needs to be moved out of the way. Now this next piece, this cable here actually connects to the door with like a yellow clip or something right there. That you can just either pull off, which I had to get better access for that door panel to go all the way down, or you don't necessarily have to. Up to you. So this whole white insulation piece here comes off pretty easy, but you don't just want to yank it, or else this adhesive will be removed too much to where you can't put it on. So what you want to do is just kind of get your finger in there and just pull it off a little bit at a time. Take your time on this, or else you're going to end up having all this adhesive left on the door and not on the actual insulation piece. That's how that piece comes off. We just move it out of the way. So the next thing you want to do here for this next piece is to take off the actual door lock mechanism, which is your latch as well. So that's what we're going to be doing next. To do this part, you need a T30 hex bit to get that part off. I'll show you that next. Alright, so for this, what you want to do is you don't want to take it completely off. You just want to loosen it. I'm going to loosen it quite a bit. We're going to loosen all three of these. You have all three of these here. So we're just going to loosen those. You don't want to take it completely off, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So the reason for that is there's still some connections inside of here that you will be able to see. See, that you have there is the linkage for the door handle itself. That's what actually unlatches the door so that you can open it. That's what you need to take off first, so you don't just pull it off. This, what you do is you can get your finger in there and you can just take that off by just pulling it like this, and that comes off fairly easy. You just move that out of the way. Now the rest you can go ahead and undo those three screws on this side again, and you can take the whole piece out. One thing I forgot to mention is this piece here that goes on the actual lock itself. You want to take that off and just kind of pull that off like that. Save it, because you will be putting that back afterwards. So this next piece here is taking off this door lock mechanism here. As long as you kind of push out this way, since it's already loosened, you can just take it off with your fingers like this. This particular one's not coming off so easily, so I'm going to use the ratchet again. Alright, so that'll just kind of fall. What you want to do now at this point, you can just take the whole assembly out. It'll be kind of coming out with your lock here too. That's what's actually holding it still there. Just kind of pull it out and you can take the whole mechanism out. want to be careful here because this is where your piece is that has the connection. You get your screwdriver and you just pry this up, pick it all the way up, and then you'll see it'll start coming out the more you pick it up. So once you get to the very top of that, you just pull it out, and at this point you can just work the whole cable out and the bar that goes for the lock button. So this is what the whole thing looks like. At this point, what you can do is you can take off the bar that goes to the lock. That's what that looks like. We'll just move it out of the way. Now this piece here is what goes to your handle that's inside of your door panel. So what I do, you can leave it on there for this step, but I actually take it off. And to take it off, you just use some needle nose, and you just want to squeeze these and pull that out. This is what we're going to do here. We're just going to squeeze those. Just going to take it out of here. It's still connected here, so you just want to just take that off of here like that and just take that out. So this is what the whole assembly looks like. You can actually get this whole assembly through GM at one of the dealerships. I don't know the cost because I've never called myself, but I've heard that it's very expensive, about $200 to $300 or so. You can buy this entire part if you don't want to go through all of this on Amazon for about 75 to 80 bucks. I chose not to. Thanks to grooveandparts.com, they actually make they actually sell the motor that we use to replace, so that you don't have to replace this entire thing. This entire thing is actually still good, works perfectly well. The only difference is that the motor inside is too weak because GM makes crappy parts on that, and so that's the only part that we're actually going to replace in this next step. There are instructions on grooveandparts.com to remove this L bracket, this entire L bracket, and then you take off these screws that are here all along the outside edge, and that's what takes off this top piece here. So that's what I'm going to show next, is how to remove all of that. Alright, so we've already moved inside. So for this next step, what we want to do, like I mentioned, is we're going to take off this bracket here so that we can get to all these screws around here, around the outside edge, get those taken off so that we can take this top piece off here. What we want to do is we want to drill out this rivet and this rivet here, because that's what's holding this in place. What I personally prefer is to use a drill first, a drill bit, to just kind of drill a pilot hole all the way through it, and then afterwards then you can come back and just ground down these heads so that this way you can get this taken off. As I mentioned, as far as the parts, this particular drill bit is a 1/8 drill bit. Got this one at Home Depot. It's listed in the parts list that I showed just previously. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. One thing I didn't mention is the hole needs to be that you drill through. You want to drill it about 1/2 inch, because that's the size of the screws that we're going to be using. I'm not going to be doing the drilling and tapping. I'm actually going to be doing the drilling and using self-tapping screws. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to do the hole about a little bit bigger than 1/2 inch. So I'll start this at the 1 inch so you can see a little bit better. So you see where the 1/2 inch is there. I drill it a little bit deeper. I do it just about maybe 5/8. Just put that there, and what this is going to be used for is so that this way, that's your stopping point when you're drilling. This way you don't drill too deep. So using that as you're drilling, then you'll only go that deep. Once you get to that point, then that's your point to stop. So I'm going to go ahead and get this bit on here. Now what you want to do here is just try to stay as close to center as possible, and you'll see what I mean by as close to center in a little bit. I've already done 2 doors already. This is my 3rd one, so this is the easiest way that I've found it to be. So with this drill, you just kind of center it here. You can use a center punch if you want, but I do it this particular way. Just try to get as much on center as possible. That's pretty close to centered there. And just take your time with this. You don't want to rush this part. All right, so you see that I've already reached to where the tape is at. Just about, which is fine. That's what you want to do. Now, like I said, it doesn't have to be 100% on center, but you just want to try to get it to where you have it as centered as possible on that. So that's one. That's how you drill one of those out. We're going to go ahead and drill the other one next. I'm going to take an air can and just kind of dust everything out here. You don't need an air can, you can just kind of brush it off, but I found that that's the easiest. So these motors here are what I got from grooveandparts.com, and you can also do that as well. You want to look at these numbers here. You may not be able to see it, but it says CCW. This is for the passenger side. The one that says CW is actually the one that's for the driver's side doors. Okay, so what you want to do on this part, like I said, is you need to take this off. We still need to take off these rivets that are here. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use my Dremel tool. There are different ways about going and getting this done. Some people have used these wheels, these cutoff wheels. Okay, you can get those at Home Depot or Walmart or anywhere. Cheaper at Walmart anyway. I've been using this grinding stone. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and ground down these heads here, this head and this head here. That's the next step. I got my Dremel tool with the stone on, grinding stone, so I'm just going to go ahead and just put that. This is really as deep as you want to go. You'll see here. That's how deep you want to go. So we pretty much just ground it down from what that looks like there to what that looks like there. You don't want to go too far deep into it, but you do want to have it to where it's flat with it so that you don't feel the head anymore. This way you can just go ahead and actually pull this entire piece off. So I'm going to do the next one now. So this one was a little bit harder for me since this stone here really couldn't fit into that area there, but it still feels okay. So now I'll just go ahead and pry this whole L bracket up. There are smaller stones that they sell for the Dremel tools, which you can use. In this particular case, I already had that one, so I didn't have to buy another one. You do just every now and then want to take off some of the shavings. You want to take off some of those shavings so this way they don't get inside of the motor area. So what you want to do, you want to just get your screwdriver. You just want to just kind of pry this up. You'll see that right here in this area, the head will start breaking a little bit. You'll see that there's like some fractures on it. You just kind of want to keep prying up. Just kind of dig your screwdriver in there and just kind of twist it. You see that comes up like that. Now you want to do the other side as well. kind of want to get your screwdriver in there. Try not to break anything though. Now you'll see that comes off. So now you'll see here, that's the actual L bracket. That's what this looks like. Once you take this off, there is this piece here. This piece here is actually has to be on the outside of this, not on the inside of this piece, because if you take the if that is in here inside of this area, your inside door handle won't work. So that has to stay on the outside, because that pushes that to actually release the mechanism to allow the door to open from the inside. So this is what I was talking about, that it doesn't have to be exactly on center. These are the areas here that we ground down, which is where the L bracket sits on these two. You'll see that from the top view of it, it doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but that's pretty much on centered as best as possible. So it still looks pretty good. So that way we can go ahead and tap the screws in afterwards. But what I'm doing, you see that it does still have a raised area there. I'm going to ground that down, which is what I did for the other ones as well. On both of those, you'll see that it does have a little bit of a lip there. For me, I just found it easier to be able to align the L bracket up afterwards. So that's what I'm going to be doing next, is just grounding those down. All right, so like I said, you don't necessarily have to do that. For me, I found it easier to line the L bracket back up, but so that's what it looks like after you grind that down there. It leaves it a little bit more flat, which is what the L bracket sits on. That's the other piece there. So next, what we want to do is we want to take a T30, which this is the T30 itself. I mean, I'm sorry, the T10, not T30. That's the T10 bit here. And we want to use that to take off the outside screws, the perimeter of this unit here, all those screws there. So that's what we're going to do next. All right, so that's all the screws here. We have a total of 7 screws that are on the outside edge here. So we're just going to take a little screwdriver here and we're just going to kind of pry this out. So this is what the area inside of here looks like. Now, underneath here is the actual motor. Sometimes it does stay on there. It just goes on with those 2 little prongs there into those 2 little sections there. So it just kind of clips on in there like that. Sometimes you may take this off and the motor is actually still sitting inside of there, which is okay. That's not a big deal. You just want to take the motor out and put the new one in. You want to make sure that everything lines up. So this is the way everything's supposed to look. This particular piece has to sit in that spot exactly like that. This piece sometimes gets out of place, so you want to make sure that it's lined up by sitting exactly in that spot like that. It goes into that hole there. I'll take this piece off so we can see, but this yellow piece here, tan piece here, has to sit flush against this whenever the motor and everything, the top piece goes back in. If not, everything's not going to be lined up properly. Sometimes it likes to do that when you're putting it back in because it hits up against this and it pushes it out. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to make sure that that stays in place. You want to push it all the way forward, as I said, so that this way it lines up against this black piece here. You want to go ahead and put this piece back in. It lines up on here as well. This piece, this top piece here, goes into this area here. This bottom piece goes into this area here. And then it goes into this hole right here, so that you just kind of line that up. So that's how it all lines up, and everything is lined up perfectly. So once we put the top piece on, that's the way the internal mechanism should stay. Now, the easiest way to get that done where it sits in easier, once you put your motor in, once again, you can either put your motor in that way, or you can put it onto those two little prongs with the two little holes that are here. You can put it in that way and set it in. I like to just go ahead and put the motor in. That's personal preference. But I found that it was easier doing it that way for me. Now you want to line everything back up. Now make sure that everything is in place, everything is where it should be. The easiest way that I found to push this back in, since this piece likes to kind of make that yellow piece push out some, I found that by putting your finger and pushing this lever up, it pulls that entire yellow piece down. So you'll see as I'm pushing it, that's going down. Okay. So with one hand and one finger, you can push this in like this. Go ahead and line everything up and just push it in. And as you're pushing it in, it'll just kind of snap in place. You want to line that hole up there. You want to line that hole up there. Sometimes this top piece won't come all the way down until you move this piece forward. So once you move it forward, you see that everything is lined up right. Don't worry about this part here. You'll see that it does feel a little bit loose. That's fine. Now for this next step, you want to take a number 6 1/2" self-tapping screw, and you'll see what that looks like there. And you just want to use that. I didn't tap these or anything. What you want to do is you just want to kind of put it in here. It will kind of take a little bit of pressure, but do not rush this part. This is very important. You just want to tap it with it. Just use a screwdriver. Just go in slowly. There's no rush on this. Go in slowly. Apply a little bit of pressure to it. And it'll start tapping it. If you see that it's starting to get a little too tight, which that one is, you want to pull it back out a little bit. You don't want to force it too much, like I said. And then just go back in again. What you're doing is you just want to make sure that those threads are getting set properly. Just want to go in. This is how I found it to be easier, doing it this way without the L bracket first. Okay, that you see that it's already towards the very bottom now. Feels like it's a pretty good thread that created. Just kind of back it out. Just kind of push it back in. See if it kind of goes in. Fairly simple, which this one does. So now that one's set, which is good. So you want to go ahead and take that screw out. Move on to the next one. Okay. Get another screw. Same thing, number 6 self-tapping screw. You want to just put it in here. You want to do the same thing on this one. Again, apply a slight pressure. Don't go too hard on it. If it starts getting too tight, you can back it back out. This one's going in fairly easy. Now that one feels good too. Back it back out slowly. Try not to mess up that thread. Now what I like to do is I like to just use new screws whenever I put the L bracket back on, because sometimes the thread gets a little bit worn as it created the thread going in. So I just kind of move those aside and I don't reuse those. But I'll use 2 new screws. The other thing you want to use is you want to use some lock washers. You can also use some thread lock. I'm personally using some lock washers as well as some washers. So you just want to set it up. So you want to put your lock washer in first and then your washer. You want to do that for both of them. Just kind of get them ready. Again, your lock washer and your washer. Now you want to get the L bracket back. You want to put it in place. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I found it easier to just kind of line everything back up again. And make sure that this is down once again on the outside of that bar. But I found it easier to grind those down so that this way they wouldn't stick through there. For me, it made it easier to line everything back up because I could still kind of move it around a little bit, which is okay. So you want to make sure that that button there goes into this area here, into that area there. So that particular white button there will go into here. So again, this goes on the outside. Just want to kind of line it up like that. Now you'll see that it's lined up. That button's in place. So that this way, if we're just kind of holding it down, you can see that it locks and unlocks like that now. Okay, so you want to put it down in the lock position, makes it a little easier. Make sure that that bracket's in place there. It's on the outside of that. So now at this point, we just want to go ahead and start screwing in those screws that we've gotten ready here. I'm just going to put it in here. We're going to go ahead and tighten it up. We're just going to tighten it up a little bit right now. Don't force it, but still, you know, kind of apply a little bit of pressure to it there. You just kind of want to set it in place. You don't want to tighten it up yet until you've lined up the other one. Once you line up the other one and get the screw in there, we'll go ahead and tighten that one up as well. Okay, now at this point, you can go ahead and start tightening them. Just don't be too aggressive, but just make sure that the lock washer is a little bit flat. Kind of hand tighten it as much as possible without breaking it. Same thing with this other one. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it. Tighten it as much as possible without breaking it. The lock washer seems to be flat now. That's all you do. That's all that's involved with taking this apart, taking the motor out, replacing the motor. Again, this is what the old motor looks like. It's pretty greasy and everything, and I'm not sure exactly if that's what the issue was with it, but some of them appear to be faulty. Most of them do. And that's with the new motor placed in there. The L bracket placed back on. 2 new screws in place to hold this down. And now we're going to go put it back into the vehicle and see how everything works. Okay, so now we're going to put the cable back in. What you want to do is you just want to push this through this area here so it snaps in place. Then this, the way you kind of lift it up is you just kind of use your finger and just lift it up and make sure that that piece, that white piece, goes into that fork there, so that way that's what controls the inside door handle that goes over here. So that's that piece, and now I'm going to put on the lock bar. What you want to do is you just want to push it through the hole here. You just want to kind of do it like this, and that's how it sits. Alright, so we're going to put it back in. This wire needs to go through this area here. You don't want to put it through here. You want to make sure that it goes through this area here. So it's just going to set in place. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in place. I'm going to put some of the screws in place just to kind of hold it on the other side. But you want to make sure that this bar comes up through this hole here. So I'm going to do that part next. Don't worry about this cable because you can just route it through this other area. Kind of bring it back in. And it sits out here on the outside. This, like I said, find where that plug is at, put it in, and once you're pushing it into that plug, you're going to push this in and it finishes setting it in. Alright, so we're just going to put the screws back in place. We want to line that up and put the screws back in place, which is what I'm going to do now. Alright, so now that that's nice and tight, we just want to make sure that the lock is working right. I'm going to go ahead and put the grommet that goes back on here. I'll put that back in place. Alright, so now we're just going to test. Now that this grommet's back on, we're going to test to make sure that it locks and unlocks. So you're just going to lock it. See, unlocks, moves up, locks, it goes down, unlocks, it goes up. So you're just going to want to kind of cycle through it several times. You want to cycle through it once the door panel's back on as well, but I'm just kind of making sure that the lock works the way it should and that all my connections are right. Okay, so now that's right. So now the next part of it is to go ahead and connect the bracket back up for the door handle. So you're just going to want to kind of line it up. You want to put it in place like that, and then just snap it back in place. So now that's back in place and everything's working on that. So now we're going to test it out from the outside. Put all these wires back in place so that this way I can test it all out. But I'm going to go ahead and test it out from the outside by closing the door and seeing if the outside handle works fine. Okay, so right now it's unlocked. You won't be able to see it, but it's actually unlocked. And it opens just fine. So now I'm going to lock it. And you'll see that it's not opening. I want to unlock it. It opens. So I want to kind of cycle through that a few times to make sure that it's locked, unlocked. So that works fine now. So now we just have to go ahead and put the door panel back on, and we should be done. Go ahead and put everything in reverse order. So put the door panel back on. We're going to put these wires through this hole here. We're going to put the cable through this other hole. We're going to route it through. We're going to line up as best we can the holes for this insulation. And we're just going to kind of set it in place, just kind of make it stick a little bit. So that this way everything is in place. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to put this bracket back on for the door handle. You'll see here, just put it in through that hole, pull that cable out some. We're going to put it through that hole there. We're just going to push it in, clips in. That's how that part clips in. So next we're going to route all these wires through this area. We're going to pull them out here. And we're going to set the bottom pieces in place first. We're going to make this lock button come through. That comes through. At this point, we're just going to find where all the holes are for everything and start putting everything back in place and snapping it back in. Okay, everything's snapping back in place. You want to, there's a seal on the back of this, which if you push onto this, it'll grab onto that seal that's on the window, so it's nice and flush in there. Now at this point, you can just take your finger and try to move this to a good spot, or you can get some needle nose for that. I may end up having to do that. So some needle nose, just kind of bring it through. You want to hold it there in place, because what we're going to do is get the button, and we're going to put that screw back in, that button back in place, so that this way the button snaps back in. So you want to have it at the utmost position, so you pull it as high as you can up. You just want to set this in place, have it to where it stops right there on that piece. Just push that in. Now you'll see that this moves up and down freely without any issues. And finally, the last piece is going to be the screw here, the two screws that go inside of here, putting this plate back on, connecting all these wires back up, and that's it. So I'll go ahead and do that last part. So the final piece is to go ahead and put this piece back on. Once again, you'll see where it says gray, black, brown, black, white. Those are where the connections go, so you don't have to worry about not putting it in the right place or not knowing where to put it. So we're going to put it exactly where it tells us. This piece snaps back down in place. And we're going to get the last two pieces, put those back in place. This one, you want to put the bottom in first. Make it easy. You put the bottom in first. That goes in place, and then the top just snaps in place. Same thing with this one. It goes in a certain way, which is like this. Just put it into the area here, snap it back in place. Now, just want to cycle through. You'll see that that's unlocked, locked, unlocked. Just keep testing it all out, cycle through it several times, make sure that everything works good. I'm going to try it with the keys to make sure that everything's good from the key standpoint. And you'll see that everything works great. So that's it. It's not too difficult. Pretty much you have some basic DIY experience. You should be able to get this done yourself.